In part one of our conversation with Reid and Grant Maxwell, the renowned father and son duo of pipe band snare drummers, discussed Taking No Shortcuts, the new 118-page collection of nearly 1,000 exercises for players of all levels. In part two, they discussed the writing ethic, the secret sauce that helps to give the Simon Fraser University Pipe Band its trademark ensemble energy, as well as Grant Maxwell's impact as leading drummer of the Vale United Pipe Band in Penticton, British Columbia. Now, Reid, you're renowned. I think, the ensemble, that effect that you've brought to Simon Fraser University, the SFU band, that ensemble sound of kind of, the energy that bands that you've iterations of the band and bands before that have brought. That is that kind of energy. Are you going to be are recipients or readers, users of Taking the Shortcuts going to be able to capture some of that patented Reid Maxwell energy?
Um, I think if they learn to play the things in the book well, and that they'll be able to deliver a score. I had a lesson this morning before we had this interview, and we were talking about, like if I write a score for a grade 4 level, and it's right in that pay grade, why can't that grade 4 level band play that score as good as SFU is going to play their competition 2/4 March that's written at that level? So it's kind of like taking the levels, and I try to very specifically write for certain levels. So when I start to write tunes, my resource is Jack Lee. I call Jack and say, I'm going to put a score together. Can you tell me exactly where you think this belongs on the scale of solo piping, band piping, and sort of get a feel for that? And then what I do is I go and I use my bag of tricks. Now, I have a great big articulated lorry of tricks for the SFU pipe band, so it's easy to write there. But when you have to write at the very start, it's why do we teach people to play The Green Hills perhaps as one of their first tunes and other little simple tunes like that? Is because they're a little bit easier to maneuver through. And so I try to make sure that on a drum, even although I've never played bagpipes ever, or even a practice genre, I try to make sure that when I'm introducing something to the learner, that it's as challenging as the pipe tune is to the piper. So I'm kind of locking it in with just some of those really basic things, So tricky things like doublings might be limited or eliminated at least at the start, and then you just get them going. I have a philosophy and a sort of statement that I make to a lot of people, and that is that when people walk in the door, youngsters especially, and they're trying to learn play drums, I do not use this. They don't see it for several months, and it all depends on the individual when they might start to see that. But one thing I learned when I came to Canada, all over North America, kids are interested in one thing, and that's being cool. I don't think I heard the word cool when I lived in Scotland, as opposed to what we reference it as. In Scotland, that was I needed to put a sweater on because it was cold, you know? And so what I try to do is it's like going fishing. I want to get the big juicy worm on the end of that line, and I want to try and pull kids in by having fun, making the noise, getting into it, laughing at myself with them, and all kinds of stuff like that. And then as they start to go, then you can see that they're taken to it. And as soon as they really start to take away, you just do like a good fisherman does, and you tug on the line and you reel them in. And at that point, you just let it go a little bit further, and then you can give them this because they're hooked. And what they realize is, oh my God, this drumming thing, it's really cool. I'm cool. And then they start to be cool. And I think that is a great approach for me. And I also look at it as there are so many distractions for kids today that were not around. When I learned to play drums, we had a black and white television. It was probably about 14 inches big, and it had 3 channels. And that was it. And so you were always looking for stuff to do. And drumming was one of my great things. And I was really lucky. I grew up, in the village where there was this great up-and-coming pipe band at the time called Dysart and Dundonald. And it was so cool to be able to do that. And I was so lucky to get a guy who taught like Willie Bell, who was incredibly given his time. And so I couldn't go wrong even if I wanted to, because it was you were unable to go wrong in that environment. So that's kind of my thing about it, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Great to hear all of that. Before we wrap up, anything more to add about taking those shortcuts and any other thoughts?
Yeah. Let me jump in here. I just like when Reid and I sort of were connecting on this and trying to expand on what it was already. We had a lot of things in mind, and one of the big things that I pride myself in helping with this project is, like, I don't think this is necessarily just a book or a tool per se for beginner intermediates. Like this is something that it really strengthens your foundation as a player. Like even at the top level, I guarantee you will find something in here useful that will help your playing. Like at the end of the day, if you don't have that strong foundation, then your house will crumble. And the stronger the foundation, the bigger the house you can support. And I think it's really cool that the book does that. And it's not just your basic paradiddles, mamadadas, all sorts of the durations of the rolls. It's got much, much, much more. The coordination aspect of drumming is very relevant in this book. And, and that's just on a learning level. As a teacher, this has all of that. And this goes to the school of thought. Like it's up for the teacher to interpret this school of thought that we've put together, even though the school of thought is just basic rhythms and rudiments. But it's all there for every level, and it's not just pipe band. Like this is rudimental drumming book. This has got all of everything that you could think of that a rudimental drummer would be able to use to their ability.
Excellent. Yeah. Reid, last thoughts?
Yeah, I would say that one of the things I struggled, and probably one of the reasons why it took so long to finally put it to print, is, am I going to lay this down the right way? And I realized that if I have a class and there's 5 or 6 kids in that class, not 2 of them are going to learn how to do things the same way. And so if I'm going to release a book and several hundred and plus people buy it, they're all going to learn different. And there's quite a few excellent teachers out there who probably would tackle things a little bit different than I do. And that's totally fine. The book just kind of gives you some content and it's kind of laid out. But I've always said, the book's laid out in a way where page 1 is the simplest and page 118 is the most complex, at least according to us when we put it to print. But you don't go through the book in an old-fashioned way where you start at page 1 and you work through every page. That's just not how I teach. So I would, if someone's racing through a little segment, then let them race and let them take their time, because the other part's not coming. It will eventually come and you don't have to worry about that, but don't get caught up. And one of the things that I chatted with Grant, even before we went to print, the last thing, because we did several conversations, was rolls. When you teach rolls, how do you teach them in sequential order? So when I learned, it was numerical: 5, 7, 9, 13, 25. And about 20 years ago, I had a student that I said, how can you play that 3-pace roll so effortlessly at your first attempt at lesson, and you've struggled with the 5s and whatever before that? And she said, but it's easier, Reid. And I said, it is. And from that very day, I changed my approach. It's like back in school, you learn your 1 times table followed by the 2, and you work your way through to the 10. Now, if they were trying to teach you with the simplest to the hardest, they go 1, 10, 2, and then fill in the blanks any which way you like. But I wouldn't get too wrapped up in it, And so that was a young teenage student, all of like 12, 13 years old, say, who said, but it's easier. And it's like, and then I went and thought, but I was like, oh my goodness, yes. And so I changed how I approached the roles. And so when I get into that segment in the book, it's like I latch on to the roles that it looks like they're going to have an easier time with, and get them first, because from that they get confidence, and from confidence they want to learn more, and then you just kind of put it all together. So the roles, I said to Grant, I said, several months after this book is printed, I'm probably going to change my mind on the sequential order we put in the book, but that's okay, because it'll change. The only thing that's remained the same over the years since that happened is I would teach the 3-pace introduction roll first, and I would teach the 5-stroke roll last. And then it's in the middle where it gets a little bit with myself, you know. So, but I just kind of go with it, and I sort of relate to how the student might be reacting to it, and I just go with that. At the end of the day, you would love them all to be able to play all of them, but does it matter if one of them learns one before? You know what I mean? It's just the way it goes. It doesn't have to be that way, and I try very hard to kind of read the students and go with what they seem to be comfortable with picking up, you know.
Well, it's so interesting that it's come out a few times now that Reid, you've made it clear that you're still learning, that you learn from your pupils all the time, and it's an evolving thing. And right now, taking no shortcuts seems to be like where you are currently with things. But already looking forward to your second printing, which is out this week, I believe, and I'm sure it'll be 3rd and 4th and 5th printing, and the book itself will evolve for sure. But I want to thank you both, Grant, Reid, for taking the time, and best of luck with the book, and we'll look forward to the future iterations of it, and look forward to hearing your playing as always. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Taking No Shortcuts is available at takingnoshortcuts.com.